So my name is Mark Woods. I'm from the state of Tennessee. I'm the pavement engineer out of the Maintenance Operations Division. I do not have slides today, which I believe you've probably figured out by this point. And I'll tell you a couple reasons why. One of them is a bit of a preservation story. For one, if you read the national news, you may have seen some articles about the state of Tennessee have had interstates recently after the last winter storms. We have a pretty strong, well, maybe strong's not the correct term to use. We have a pretty large open graded friction course program on the interstates, one that's been in place since probably about 2008, 2009. It generally, unless it was a very, very urban interstate section like downtown Nashville, we would pave it with open graded friction course. And over the last two winters, the winter storms have really, really severely damaged our open grade friction course, in which case I would measure up somewhere on the order of about 10 paving projects long in the Middle Tennessee area, almost completely delaminated over the last 3 or 4 months. And when I mean completely delaminated, I mean it was just gone. It would have been convenient if it had all just come out in 1 or 2 days, but what actually happened was the OGFC would come up for miles on end, and we would send these, everybody procures maintenance a little different. We have what we call in-place maintenance, which is like on-call maintenance contracts, which include paper placed by the contractor. So we work up a cost proposal, and then we'd get them out there, and they'd do $800,000 of mill and repair, which you cannot get open graded mix very easily in February and March, especially on a maintenance contract. So we were doing dense graded paver place patches in 4 and 8 lane open graded mixtures, meaning now you have a dense graded mix next to open grade mix. If you haven't caught on, it's a really great situation. We're in the process of doing some emergency procurements to try to get resurfacing projects on the ground to get, as of last night's tally, probably somewhere around $60 to $70 million worth of emergency resurfacing contracts that we're going to put in a July letting to get fixed before the end of the year. So I was a little busy working on that and did not prepare any slides. Anybody knows me, I don't really have any problem talking. I know when you're in a conference, if somebody has beautiful slides like Chad has, you can kind of absorb the picture and not absorb the words. So I encourage you, I will be paying attention to see if Heath is looking at his phone, and I'm looking for Erne. I'm going to spot her too. Wait, I've got 30 minutes. As I was kind of conjuring up of what my content would be for this preservation, I was told when I found out I was speaking not too long ago, I was told that I was talking about DOT preservation success stories. So my mode of thinking was, first I needed to find what is success, what is success, and I think SEPPP has turned into a really great group. I've been coming for a number of years. We have evolved as kind of a technical group. So we're not doing basic preservation talks in this group, I don't think, anymore. We don't endure, I'm very thankful that this group, we do not have to endure somebody coming up here and doing preservation basics, and giving you the curve and then I think we've established that you guys all know that pretty well. So when I talk about what is a preservation success story, I'm going to get back to the OGFC thing because Heath knocked me off keel. You think about the parts of a preservation program that have really become part of the institutional knowledge that I think we talk about a lot. The parts are, first, you do have to have executive support. You have to have support from leadership. You have to have a very good construction and material specs, which is a challenge. That's an endeavor of its own. If you've never done chip seals, if you've never done cold in place, hot in place, all those things, you don't just write specs overnight. And some of us joke that if I want to do something I've never done before, I'll just copy Chad's. Get Chad's, but it doesn't. You still have to work some stuff up and make some changes. You have to have good trained staff. You have to have trained staff on the DOT side to know how to inspect it, and you have to have good trained staff on the contractor side. Sometimes you get one of them trained up and then they will report out that the other one is not. You might have very good DOT staff and then a contractor from somewhere will show up and they go, I know what I'm doing, this guy doesn't. And then you have to have very good selection processes. If you have a bad selection of a preservation treatment is not a success in any way. There was a good presentation a couple years ago at TRB. It was a grad student from LSU, I think, in one of those technical sessions that talked about type 1 and type 2 errors in preservation. Type 1, I believe, was where you put a preservation candidate on a road where it was not a preservation candidate. It was a rehab candidate, and the project wasn't a success. It fell apart immediately because it was under-designed as a pavement section. And the type 2 era is where you do rehab and a 4-inch mill and replace on a road that probably would have been a fine preservation candidate. That is a very important technical concept to me, because I think in a preservation world, to have a strong program, you have to have a mindset of pavement design in your treatment selection processes. If you have a FedEx facility, which we have one in Tennessee, you have a very large FedEx facility and 5 inches of hot mix over a 6-inch base, that's probably not a preservation candidate. Now, rehab, we should have a rehab conference too, because this isn't, that's a really, that's deep water and it's a deep rabbit hole to talk about. But all those parts, you could come up here and talk about the successes of any given thing. I think Chad did a pretty good spread there of all those things. You didn't talk about your executive support, and I wouldn't either. But you guys have it. Kentucky has very good success. For me, for Tennessee, you take all those moving parts, building good specs. Over time, when you get to have a larger program, now you want to start making some of those parts autonomous and make that a success. You literally have standards that define how you write standards for new preservation treatments, which we have. We have a policy. A couple years ago in Tennessee, when we were managing the 7 or 8 different really commodity preservation treatments that we're running, we noticed a lot of our problems were not in specs, because our materials people are pretty strong. We have a very strong materials division. They generally write our construction specs, and they're on the road. If you do a CIR for the first time, everybody and their mama shows up, right? And so you have good inspection, good material specs, but our plans were kind of crappy. Sorry. We were having errors in plans on preservation projects left and right, because construction specs and design standards are 2 different things. And what would happen is we had these really bright people in materials that would write a new spec for cold in place, or they'd write a new spec for scrub seals, or revise the scrub seal spec. And our designers are 2 floors away, or usually, sometimes on the other side of the county. And the plans just kept coming out as usual. They would get PS&Es and develop plans, and you go, well, hey, we changed the spread rate to this, and it's this many gallons per square yard on that. No, nobody told me. I looked for that email, I didn't find it. So we institutionalized the way that when you make changes to your treatment standards, if it's a provisional, a lot of things you do, you don't put hot in place straight into the spec book on your first project. But so you have special provision, and then now it's just become best practice. Like if you're revising the special provision, it needs to come with provisional design standards as well. And that needs to go in the hand of a designer. You will remove a lot of mistakes. Once something's in a set of plans and it goes to contract, that's a legal document. And the contractor, if he's lost or if he has the freedom, some things require a change order to fix. So one of the things in our open graded friction course thing that we realized, we hired the very good people of NCAT to kind of help us look at these projects that were coming up. And what happened, if you don't know Don Watson is kind of one of the OGFC he's kind of the central part of the knowledge base for open graded pavements. He's been with NCAP a very long time, and NCAP really is kind of the central OGFC group of experts. So they came and looked at our program, and a couple of things they found out was that I'm getting into materials things, our OGFC air void spec was a little high. We were trying to do a good thing and make them more permeable and make them safer. They're supposed to drain, so more air voids would be better. But we think that may be one of the things that caused them to freeze and thaw and kind of blow up. But they recommended that we consider doing fog seals on our open graded program. And I know Sam Wheeler's in here somewhere. I joked last night that we did about 1,000-foot pilot of a fog seal on OGFC, and we got really nervous and friction tested it every 20 minutes for like 6 days. And Matt Chandler of Materials came up here and talked about it at this meeting. And then immediately after Matt talked about our 1,000-foot section, Sam Wheeler of Georgia reported that Georgia had fog sealed 300 linear miles of OGFC that year. Like, okay, well, I'm not worried about our 1,000-foot section anymore. I think we can go hard. So we are going to implement that per NCAP's recommendations. We still have, maybe another $70 million worth of open graded friction courses that we're not emergency repairing right now. So that we hope that will be a success. Generally, the ones that have followed, the OGFCs that fell apart were 6 and 7 years old. We would like to stretch them to 9 and 10. So a couple other things, just kind of basic run through of preservation treatments that TDOT does. What I would call a commodity means that they're very institutionalized treatments. Probably the most institutionalized preservation treatments in Tennessee are our microsurface program and our thin overlay program. We've been doing both of those for years. We have been doing micro for much longer in certain regions. And really what I think makes that strong is we're fortunate to have a couple of placement vendors that live in the state. So they're not totally from out of town, and we're not the traveling operation. And then we have that institutional knowledge on the inside in our inspectors. We have some district offices who love micro. They have been around it from day one. The guy that trained them loved micro, and we're on 3rd and 4th generation micro lovers in the Chattanooga, Cookeville area. And that's where those are the guys who are like, why don't you go eat lunch with the guys in regions 3 and 4 so we can kind of get that going. So we have no challenges with them. And we talk about, we don't have dedicated funding. I think that was mentioned yesterday. In about the 2008, 2009 era, we did try to do dedicated funding. We told each of the 4 regions that you had to do 10% of your 10% of your funding had to go towards preservation treatments. And these are guys who are running a maintenance office or a construction office at the same time as putting together a resurfacing list. So they just took their list of mill and inlay projects and were like, all right, I'll take off however many there are at the bottom to get to 10%. And then I'll sub in, and they're like, how quick can I get to 10? So microsurface at the time was really the hottest or the most expensive preservation treatment compared to fog seal and some of their other choices at the moment. And then they really just kind of threw some micro projects out there. As soon as we did that, if you think 10% of $200 million is a decent amount of money. So the hot mix industry naturally looked at that and said, I just lost $20 million. What just happened? And they made the right phone calls. They weren't wrong by one perspective. What we had actually done was we increased the entire resurfacing budget by that proportional amount. So we could tell them, like, well, your tonnages are going to be the same. We just increased funding, and now we do 10%. So they really didn't lose any money. But rightfully so, we still overnight came up with 2 thin overlay specs. We're not a super paved state, but it would be the equivalent of 4.75 and a 9.5 millimeter. Our lift thicknesses kind of creeped up over the following years. We were really aggressive because everybody was trying to put alternate bid projects to market. The hot mix guys wanted to bid against the micro guys. They wanted all the project. They saw that we increased the budget $20 million. They wanted that money too. I don't blame them. I would like $20 million also. But over time, I have tried to disseminate. I publicly don't really believe in alternate projects. I think they should be rare. One of the things that we try to train our staff to do in project selection, because we talk about proper project selection as one of the essential parts of a preservation program. We train our people in the field to engineer every project, meaning if you have a 7-mile section of rural highway, first you're telling me you do need to get out of the truck. That's a good first step. We use PMS data. We make pavement management recommendations to start them off with. But it's an important concept to understand that 7-mile section of highway, there's not one treatment option for any given road. I don't care what road you're on. I don't care what it looks like. You probably have 5 or 6 options over a 10-year period. And if you PMS people like Chad know that. If you're looking at a PMS analysis, you could see that 7-mile section of road is churned through decision trees in year 1, and there's 4 or 5 options. They each have different costs, micro, thin lift. You could gut it and replace it 4 inches down, and that's going to have a cost too. And then they each have different projected benefits. So any given road could undergo a bunch of different things. You can do that same mode in rehab too. So we tell our guys to engineer their projects. I'm trying to do this delicately. So if you're using statewide prices, you'll get much different outcomes on that cost-benefit analysis. So you take all those projected costs and projected benefits, and you'll go, okay, well, my highest cost benefit is the thin overlay in year 5. It's like, it's a micro candidate now, but I can push another year, and for this particular road, your geographic cost models for hot mix are very particular, depending on your geographic layout of asphalt plants, which is what makes a lot of us very different. Some of you have a very dense map of asphalt plants. Some of you have a very good spread. I think I've talked to some of y'all that literally just have one supplier on the whole state. But in Tennessee, we have a good spread and decent amount of diversity. So if you start heat mapping tonnage prices in the state of Tennessee, you'll start to say like that cost benefit comparison between chip seal, scrub seal, micro, thin overlay, milling inlay, in that particular county, the micro wins. And this is how people get into alternate projects. This is why they want to bid micro versus thin lift, because the local guy in that county is sick of paying $178 a ton for asphalt. The right thing to do, in my opinion, would be to engineer the projects, use your historical bid prices. Historical bid price for micro is a little bit smoother from a geographic standpoint. Micro, as the great Gary Head of T-Dot Materials once said, micro is more like a kind of a Stuckey's operation. They're all over. They move. Stuckey's doesn't move. I think he thought, I guess they're the travelers and we're the Stuckeys. So micro prices don't jump from county to county. They jump from aggregate supply. So there's not a county line jump. You don't get 80 miles away from an asphalt plant. But every once in a while, you'll have a county where the average unit price of asphalt and the average unit price of micro are pretty close to one another. And then you go, okay, that's an alternate. I really discourage them. I encourage our people to make decisions and make strong ones and stand behind them. And it's important to do that engineering and use the average unit prices, because it's a really fun conversation when a bidder calls you and says, why is this job a micro and why don't I have the option of bidding on it? You can be like, why don't we go back and look at the bid prices over the last few years? Because once those go into the bid system, they're there forever. As it's been said before, you can kill a fat hog today when you're the only show in town. I was like, but it won't last forever. competition naturally evolves. That's a Gene Arnold quote, kill a fat hog. So let me talk about some of our treatments here. I think it would go without noting that you guys in this industry and me we're a little bit asphalt biased in the preservation world. It goes without saying that most of us are like 90+% asphalt, so our asphalt bias is a little bit built in. If you're a pro preservation, I think it's worth noting that preservation and concrete pavements, all those principles, the return on investment, and it's better to preserve it now and hold it together. I think it's exponential for concrete as compared to asphalt. I mean, once the asphalt's gone, 2 or 3 inch repair is painful from a cost perspective. Once the concrete's gone, you've never felt pain like that before. If you're just getting into pavement management, I highly recommend that you start building a concrete preservation program now, of which we did not have a few years ago. Our district and operations guys were very quick to go ride roads and find resurfacing and preservation candidates and work on the kind of their maintenance budget inputs. And they would go, this one's concrete. The asphalt starts again in about 6 or 7 miles. And nary gave it a thought. That's what they just talked about lunch, and then the concrete went in and they get back on it. But you look at them and you go, hey, this concrete was built 24 years ago. Nobody's touched it. And TDOT's program that we're building in now, we met with the life cycle team, we met with the pavement design team. Pavement design actually has inputs for what they assume is being done to asphalt and concrete. So we had a very enlightening conversation with them. We're like, what are you doing in your life cycle? And they said, we assume that the concrete is built year 1. We assume that it gets joint resealing and a 1 to 3% partial or a small repair at 15 years. We assume that happens again at 30 years. And then, they have like an overlay period to get the asphalt and the concrete. And I was like, and then he asked me, he said, are you guys doing the joint reseals and the diamond grind of 15 years? Like, no, we have some that were like 38 years old and had not been touched. We're like, well, let's go joint. So we're building in a joint reseal program. We did award our first large diamond grinding project in a really long time in the Chattanooga area just a few lettings ago. I think we probably still have some work to do there just with standards and with industry. I mean, you can put stuff out in the letting, but that, you almost have to market it. Like, does anybody, you have to make some phone calls like, hey, we're doing a diamond grinding project if anybody's interested. The only to say, going back to that autonomy of preservation, you can talk about the individual treatments. TDOT has now done, we have a pretty strong hot in place recycling program that has gone on for years, probably 6 or 7 years now. We do 2 or 3 big H-hour projects a year. Great thanks to Dust Raw, who's really kind of our go-to contractor for that. We have a very strong micro program, a good thin lift program now, which is mostly our 9.5 millimeter at 85 pounds. We did 3-4 cold in place projects this past year, and we have done some FDR projects, and I won't tell that story here, but the FDR project really is a story because that was like a Muhammad Ali boxing match to get that thing to market. Everybody fought it. Everybody except the whole world fought me. I paid for the project, so I just kept going like, I'm paying for that job. This is happening. We had mayors, county mayors, Cargill, like industrial suppliers have factories nearby, and there's definitely a good story there. If you're ever interested, just ask me about it. We have a whole other story going on with pavement condition. We have one of our 4 regions is in very much dire straits. TDOT has 4 regions from our PMS, State of Good Repair metrics. Regions 1 through 3 are running somewhere in the order of about 45 to 55% good pavements. Region 4 in the last report was 17% good pavements. It is a different state. It is our gravel region. multiple factors cause that. So we have a long, no pun intended, long road ahead in that area. So we built in a DBST program. We do bid-led contracted double chip seal projects, and we received bids on 2 20-mile double chip seal projects in West Tennessee this last Friday, and we'll do probably 5 or 6 more, because when you're trying to get it back up, the first thing you do is just chip seal everything, chip seal the whole thing, and then we'll start coming back with overlays when we can. We have a crack attenuating mixture program per the Everyday Counts TOPS initiative. I could talk about crack seal all day. Love crack seal. The highest return on investment is crack seal. And then, I will say, from the autonomous and trying to build a program where all those things are institutionalized and autonomous for preservation program, I do have to say, I very much admire the strides that the state of Kentucky has made over the last 10 years. That chart that you showed, where it was nary a project and then it just blew up, I think that is really something to talk about. It's not the real reason I let Chad go first. It's because I wasn't ready. But I think that is the picture of an autonomous program. That is a really a program built from the ground up, and Kentucky is doing a great job. So we're doing Q&A, but we...
Thank you, Mark. You mentioned that some of the districts have very good in-house micro knowledge. Have you worked on capturing any of that knowledge into some training manuals or best practices documents? And if so, where can I steal it from?
Well, so, you can only put so much in black and white and text. We did do that. Like I said, we're on at least our 3rd generation of, pro micro people. Like I said, it's that Chattanooga to Cookeville, what we call our region 2. There was a guy who's worked from the 70s into the 90s who truly believed in micro. It was in that era where the guys in districts just kind of did whatever they want. And so he believed in micro. He had a contractor who was showing up to the letting, so it was just done. And then when the next guy, this guy Frank, came in, that was his teacher. So he taught him a lot of the stuff of you got to ride roads. You do a lot of riding roads, and you get to them now, and this one's fair, so keep it fair. You cannot put relationships built into a printed document. You have to invest the time in coming to stuff like this. If you're really trying to do that, I think what Chad and them did of actually just investing in the time and the peer exchange of having people come in talking about it, you just got to stay on them. I've dozens, I have 12 districts, and I've got 6 or 7 who just fight. And I'm like, well, y'all. So, but we've been talking about doing something like they have. Just bring them in, send them to stuff like this. You guys. You can't host SEPPP, can you? But that would be. Y'all aren't actually a southeastern state, but you can send your guys. They'll come because there's free lunch, but maybe they'll absorb some stuff, and I think you'll get some return there. The documents, I think there's tons of good documents out there right now. But yeah, most of that was just word of mouth.
OGFC preservation, are you guys just using an age trigger for that?
We hadn't even picked the projects yet. I cannot explain. It's bad. There's a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails. They share the love, but I answer 2 of them a day, and they're always pretty mad. Basically, we still have guys on the road right now making the assessment of, will this one make it through the winter, next winter, or should we fog seal it? And then when we can get the dust cleared and start throwing plans together to put in an emergency letting, the stuff that remains, we'll sit down. We'll basically take the list of all OGFCs in the whole state and go, okay, well, what's been really weird about the OGFC thing is there have been no common factors. It's not like, oh, it's that limestone source, or oh, it's that contractor, or oh, it's that age. They've been pretty variable age. We've had some that we're doing emergency contracts on, and they're 4 years old. And a lot of them are 8 and 9 years. We'll do a bunch right now. There's a little risk in fog sealing because of the friction, Like, well, I don't want people, the irony that you put the OGFC there to improve safety and then you'll fog seal it and now it's not safe. But, so like I said, Sam made me feel weak, a couple years ago. I was like, all right, well, maybe I shouldn't be that worried. You did not report about people getting into wrecks on your fog seal project. So, yeah. So Alex, it would probably be more of an experimental design this year. We're going to do a varied age and condition and maybe report out here in a couple of years.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.